What's up, ladies and gentle-tubers? It's Tyler. Welcome back to the eveRide channel. On my recent adventure to Colorado, I was most looking forward to riding and reviewing the KLR 650, DRZ 400, and WR 250R. However, another bike was thrown into the mix that doesn't quite fit in today's enduro dual sport mold of roost and fury, but was nevertheless remarkably fun to ride. The Yamaha XT 225 and later the XT 250. The real shock was that I not only understood the appeal and dogged loyalty that XT owners have to the little Yamaha, but found it to be a superior bike to the more enduro-style dual sports in many ways. Not in all ways, but in enough that in terrain like this, I would highly recommend the XT over those bikes. In short, the Yamaha Serow, literally named after a little goat antelope thing found in Asia, is now one of my favorite motorcycles ever. Let's get this bike's stereotypes out of the way. The XT 225 I ride in this video belongs to my good friend Colorado Dual Sport's wife, Stacy. The XT 250 that I rode belongs to the wife of my new friend, Ferret Face. When you hear mention of the XT in forums and groups, it's often referred to as an excellent bike for somebody's wife. If you want to have fun, Google Dual Sport Wife and see how often the XT comes up. But hold up, because while the XT is a fantastic choice for a wife, or a slightly shorter or a new rider, it can be a ton of fun for even the manliest man. It's like the dual sport equivalent to Manny Pacquiao. Small, light, and generally good-natured, but still capable of beating most bigger guys to a pulp under the right circumstances. While riding a Colorado trail that shall not be named because Hermit the Vlog wants to keep it all hermity, with the WR 250R and DRZ 400, I felt like I'd entered a motorcycle cheat code. The XT just makes everything so easy. The 225, known as the Serow in some places, weighs just about 240 pounds, which is rather feathery for a dual sport. The XT 250 weighs a shocking 270 pounds, within 50 pounds of a DRZ. But on a bike this small, 50 pounds is significant. 80 pounds, like the 225, is even more so. The 225 is so light you really can just flick it. The power is smooth and predictable, but always there at low speeds, and while there's not that familiar KLR or even DRZ chug that says you're about to stall, at the low RPMs it just flows. Even down low it never stalled, even in second. It takes you up the steepest of hills like an escalator, as long as you have traction. And finding traction isn't hard, because when the going gets rough, you can waddle up the hills. And to find traction, you just bump the seat and it's suddenly there, but never really enough to loop out. The bike's tank is just over 2 gallons, but with fuel economy from 60 to 80 miles per gallon, the range is fantastic for the trails it's meant to do. The seat on the 225 was poofy for stock, and felt much better than most larger bikes' stock seats. However, unlike the Serow, the seat on the newer 250 mimicked a board, unfortunately. Maybe it's just not broken in, but the 225 seat was far more tolerable. Seat height is just about 32 inches on both, and when compared to a KLR or DRZ's 35 inches, that makes a big difference if you don't have a tall in-seat.
Go, XT! Huge tree in the way! Ruts on the side! Oh my gosh! Shift down! Do it! Wheelie! Not! Oh man.
Reliability-wise, there's just a few things you need to know. It's a Yamaha. It's a simple and accessible design, and they built a lot of them over a lot of years, so parts, groups, and online resources are everywhere. It's got a faithful, helpful following, and for good reason. It's capable, affordable, and near perfect for certain trails and riders. I think it's a good sign when you Google a bike, and the first thing that comes up are dedicated forums for the motorcycle. The XT225 and XT250 felt the same power-wise and aren't too different in the stats either. Surprisingly, on paper, the 225 has more horsepower and torque, but just slightly. The 225 produces horsepower in the high teens and torque in the low teens, as does the 250. To draw a comparison, the DRZ produces just over 30 horses and around 25 foot-pounds of torque, stats which are very similar to the KLR 650. I find the exact specs really irrelevant because the age and condition of the bike is going to make these numbers vary wildly. I'm fine to just say that the 225 and 250 both felt the same power-wise until about 55 miles per hour. Power was predictable, but definitely on the slow side compared to the other dual sports. I was maxing out the 225 at about 60 miles per hour, and I had a hard time going over 55, but it does have a 6th gear. The 250 only has 5 gears, but managed 70 before maxing out completely, and I had a hard time going over 65. But while most people would look at the modest power delivery as a downside, it's actually a bit refreshing. There's almost a sense of playfulness about it, knowing you'll rarely, if ever, loop it. You can go full throttle on a flat track turn and laugh on the way out, and pop the front tire up for a little kicker wheelie or out of the whoops. The sound that it makes follows suit with the toy theme. At idle, you can barely tell it's on, but when rapping it out, it's almost aftermarket loud.
Oh, shoot!
But it's not all roses for the little XTs. To rattle quickly through the cons, which aren't many, it's got weak suspension that you'd never want to blast through the whoops. I tried and the result was a lot of white smoke. Sorry, Bat Tacy. The rear drum brake is just kinda silly. On the road it's vague, and in the dirt it either feels like it's either 100% there or 100% not. The bike feels a bit sketchy in the pavement twists and a little frightening on the highway, even when its power limitations keep it at or under the speed limit. However, those things can all be overlooked because of what it's meant to do. It's just not supposed to have motocross suspension or be an adventure tourer. What it is a trail bike, and I find that its biggest cons are related to it being a trail bike. I'm an average American at about 5 foot 10 inches, so this really doesn't apply to the shorter riders it works best for. But the seating position on the 225 felt cramped, and while it might have been just the seat, surprisingly, even worse on the 250. I made the comment several times that I felt like I was riding in the fetal position. Anybody bigger than me might feel like a circus bear riding a miniature bike. I guess this is inherent to any off-road bikes that keeps a low seat height while still trying to keep a decent ground clearance. This position means that your knees will be bent and high if you're up in the saddle where you should be, but the peg position forces your toes slightly forward and down over the front of the pegs. Now this isn't just a problem for big people. The combination of cushy suspension, having my toes pointed at the ground off the pegs, and an 11-inch ground clearance from the pegs meant that I always felt that my toes were just one bounce from being smashed against a rock or a root. On the rocks and deep ruts, where the bike performs best is the very place where your toes and the bike's pegs are most vulnerable to the bike's paradoxical design. Its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness, so when riding the XT, make sure you've got good protective boots and stand up as often as possible. Even then, in some ruts, I just chickened out, so I often resorted to just sit and waddle. I only hit my toes a few times and the ground clearance on a DRZ is just an inch or two more, so perhaps I was just being paranoid. And the final con, and one that many dual sport bikes have, is that this bike has a bit of a ceiling. While it's a really fun bike and capable, you might find yourself maxing it out and getting a little bit bored if you're not on the trails that it's suited for. To speak nerd, you may want to level up and try a bike that's a little more difficult, that perhaps can do a little bit more. Then again, if I lived near trails like this, I'd not only own an XT225, but probably ride it the most of any motorcycle. In the end, the shortcomings of the XT are inherent to any great trail bike, and its strengths make it just so much easier to handle, ride, and feel under control.
Oh, I just wheelied the XT! Another one! Now it's more like a prolonged jump. Oh, nice. Here we go.
The truth is, this bike was like a little confidence machine. Suddenly I could go anywhere I wanted and not worry about ever dropping it or getting stuck or getting hurt because it's just so predictable. It's low enough that you just plop your feet down in a pinch and light enough that you could literally drag it out or over whatever gnar you're in. So while the XT might have a reputation as a great bike for wives and girlfriends, which it is, it's a phenomenal choice for anybody, wife or husband or single or young or old or new experienced, with access to rocky, ruddy, nasty trails, short commutes, or who just wants to have a good time without the, the drama of a more powerful enduro bike. And I think that's where this bike shines the most. It just doesn't take itself too seriously. It will never pretend to be an enduro racer, so if you ride it, neither will you. For a dual sport, it may be the farthest thing from a hardcore enduro race bike out there, and that's what I loved about it. It's a bike that I could take to its limit and have a blast on without expectations of massive wheelies or raging through the whoops. It's like dating the fun girl versus the cheerleader. Not as exciting or noteworthy to high school cliques, but way more fun and more relaxed. I think the reason why I love it so much is that if I were a motorcycle, I would probably be the XT 225. More interested in having fun, waddling up trails, and having a good laugh than chugging energy drinks and ripping wheelies at 90 miles an hour, flames shooting out of my color-coordinated pants. So I hope this review and the other reviews on the eveRide channel help you to pick the dual sport motorcycle that fits you the best and allows many happy and safe adventures. If you liked the video, I'd love to have you subscribe for more like this, and if you're looking for other review videos, click here to see an entire playlist full of dual sport and adventure reviews, tips, and much more. Thank you so much for watching, and to Jeff and Stacy, Hermit and Aaron, thank you guys so much for letting me ride your bikes and crash at your places in Colorado. Much love, ladies and gentle tubers. eveRide out.
I'm gonna push this little XT. Oh man, this bike is a donkey. It's like, you just put, when you're in trouble, you either seat bump or you just put your feet down and like run. Oh, it's freaking awesome.